Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. All right, so this is the second part of day 138. We are in Kings verse chapter 3, excuse me. So this is a two-part. Sorry, I had to split it up on the video. So if you're just seeing this one first, go back to the first part of day 138 where you're going to see 2 Kings chapter 2, and we have the song and the prayer and everything. So I'm not going to do that whole part all over again. This is just a continuation. But if you're just joining because you've seen this, my name is Angelique and I'm your favorite reading Bible buddy. We're reading the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and we're doing it in less than 1 year. But again, this is the second part, so go to part 1 if you didn't see it already, and then come back to this one. So I'm going to start at the beginning of the chapter of 2 Kings chapter 3. It's talking about how Moab now rebels against Israel. Verse 1. Now, Jehoram, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel at Samaria in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father and mother, for he put away the sacred pillar of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he persisted in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. He did not depart from it. So here we're seeing like sometimes they're doing some of the stuff, like they're walking in some of the ways of the Lord, but then they're still holding on to some of those pagan things. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of just, this is what their family does, so they're just leaving it alone. But God really wanted them to wipe everything out. Let's keep going, verse 4. Now, Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep bearer, and he regularly paid the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But it happened when Ahab died that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So King Jehoram went out of Samaria at the time and mustered all Israel. Then he went and sent to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, saying, "The king of Moab has rebelled against us. Will you go with me to fight against Moab?" And he said, "I will go up. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses." Then he said, "Which way shall we go up?" So of course, remember, Jehoshaphat was the one who was kind of following the Lord. He didn't take down all the things, but he was following. But we're seeing here, what did he not do? He didn't inquire the Lord. He just said, "Yes, we're allies, we're together, let's go." Let's see how that turns out for him. And he answered by the way of the wilderness of Edom. Verse 9. So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and they marched on that roundabout route 7 days, and there was no water for the army, nor the animals that followed them. And the king of Israel said, "Alas, for the Lord has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." But Jehoshaphat said, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here that we may inquire of the Lord by him?" So one of the servants of the king of Israel answered and said, "Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here, who poured water on the hands of Elijah." So, pause there, Jehoshaphat, as I said, he did inquire of the Lord now, but this was kind of after the fact. So as I said, he was trying to follow in the footsteps of like David and Asa, which I believe was his grandfather or great-grandfather. But not fully, because we're seeing he initially went and said, "Yeah, I'm going to fight," without inquiring. But now when he got into trouble, at least he's coming back and getting to the sense and say, "Let's inquire of the Lord." Verse 12. And Jehoshaphat said, "The word of the Lord is with him." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, "What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and the prophets of your mother." So again, Elisha is bold. I love Elisha. He's just like, "Yo, I don't even want to talk to you," because remember, the king of Israel, he was doing whatever he wanted to do, and he was following the pagan gods. He was a Baal worshiper and all of those things. So he's like, "Yo, go to the prophets of your father and your mother." Because remember, Ahab was their parents, and Jezebel was the high priestess daughter, right? They had all the real true living prophets of God killed all of those things. So he's like, "I have nothing to do with you," right? But let's keep going, and this is still in verse 13. But the king of Israel said to him, "No, for the Lord has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." So this is who he's talking. He's like, "I don't have anything to do with you." Verse 14. And Elisha said, "As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, surely were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not look at you, nor see you. But now bring me a musician." So because of Jehoshaphat and how he was honoring God, that's the only reason that Elisha is like, hey, I'll listen and talk to you. But I also thought it was so interesting that he's like, bring me the musician. So if you've been reading along with me, remember I said the music, a lot of times even before they went to war and things of that nature, they had the musicians go ahead of them, and that set like the presence and the atmosphere for the presence of the Lord to come. So that created an atmosphere of the Spirit of the Lord and of peace and things of that nature. So again, he's like, bring the musician, get out all this chaos, and let's set the tone for God. Then it happened when the musician played that the hand of the Lord came upon him. And he said, thus says the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. For thus says the Lord, you shall not see wind, nor shall you see rain, yet the valley shall be filled with water, so that you, your cattle, and your animals may drink. And this is the simple matter in the sight of the Lord. He will also deliver the Moabites into your hand. Also, you shall attack every fortified city and every choice city, and shall cut down every good tree, and stop up every spring of water, and ruin every good piece of land with stones. Now it happened in the morning when the grain offering was offered that suddenly water came by way of Edom, and the land was filled with water. And when all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, all who were able to bear arms and older were gathered, and they stood at the border. Then they rose up early in the morning, and the sun was shining on the water. And the Moabites saw the water on the other side as red as blood. And they said, this is blood. The kings have surely struck swords and have killed one another. Now, therefore, Moab to the spoil. I'll pause this. So this was not actually blood in the water. It was maybe like a reflection off of the sun. Maybe it was just God stirring up some type of different perception in their eyes. But either way, they just saw blood and thought, okay, remember there's three kings that came together. They're fighting amongst each other. So we have the victory. Let's go and get the spoil because they're all dead. Or at least most of them are dead. But that's not actually what happened. Verse 24. So when they came to the camp of Israel, Israel rose up and attacked the Moabites, so that they fled before them, and they entered their land, killing the Moabites. Then they destroyed the cities, and each man threw a stone on every good piece of land and filled it, and they stooped up all the springs of water and cut down all the good trees. But they left the stones of Kir Hareseth intact. However, the slingers surrounded and attacked it. And when the king of Moab saw that the battle was too fierce for him, he took with him 700 men who drew swords to break through to the king of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his eldest son, who would have reigned in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering up in the wall. And there was great indignation against Israel. So they departed from him and returned to their own land. Wow, that's the end of Kings 3. Didn't I tell you that these pagan worshipers were crazy? They were just doing all sorts of things. He offered his own son. You see at the end, verse 27. They were not winning, so he offered his own son up to be able to supposedly win. But they're not knowing that there was only one true living God, and it was just God who reigned then and still reigns today, who gave the Israelites the victory. So let's see if there's anything. If anything stood out for you, let me know. I'll see if there's anything else. In verse 17 and 18, right, it's Elisha who's saying, you should not see wind, you should not see rain. Right? Remember, because, again, sometimes they use the particular things of the weather because the pagans believed that their Baal god was the god of the weather and of storms and things of that nature. So when others can see that it was God that controlled the wind, God that controlled the wind, God that controlled that, then now the glory can go to the true living God. And that was really it. I think we can do one more chapter. Hopefully you guys are okay with that. Let's do one more, chapter 4. All right. There's a great story in here, one of my favorites. So, verse 1. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves. So I love the fact that they could come out. They knew that Elisha was a man of God, and then they're saying, like, this widow, she's like, hey, my husband served the Lord. So they know what the criteria. People knew what the criteria were in order to be able to receive the blessings and that the rewards from God, right? Not to say that is the reason to serve God, but that is also the benefits, some of the things that you can reap from serving God, right? and that you can call out to him when you know that he is your true living God. But the thing with the widows, why this is so significant, because remember the widows, when they died, it was the husbands who were the ones in charge in terms of income and things of that nature, or their son, if you have an eldest son who's able to now work. But she obviously must have had some younger sons who were not able to work, and they weren't able to have any money, so now they're kind of destitute. So that's why she was crying out to the prophet. Verse 2, so Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil. Then he said, go, borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, then pour it out into all those vessels and set aside the full ones. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass when the vessels were full that she said to her son, bring me another one. And he said to her, there is not another vessel. So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest. Beautiful story. Beautiful stories. I thought it was so great because, right, she's trusting in him. She knows he's a man of God. Like she's like, I have nothing. He's like, go get all these vessels. So imagine how she had to feel to also go to all her neighbors. Like, hey, can I get a vessel? Can I get a vessel? They're probably asking her why. Well, she's going to say, I don't know. This guy told me. This prophet told me. But she didn't even question any of that. She didn't ask him why either. She just went and did it. And I also love the fact that he's like, he made sure her debt was taken care of, but he's also made sure her future was taken care of, because she said what's left over, now you can live on that by selling it. And the fact that she had to do work, which is another part that I won't go into too much, but she had to go and get the vessels. And she had to also be responsible, a good steward of the stuff that God gave her, that the man of God gave her, which was now she was able to make money. He said, go pay your debt. So she couldn't just go scoundrel it all over the place. She had to actually pay the debt to make sure she would not stay in debt. Right? So I took that from it as well. Right? Because everything we have here, we could take it and apply it to our everyday lives. Because God blesses us, sometimes, a lot of times, to be a blessing to other people, but also we have to be good stewards of the things that he gives us, whether it's money, talents, a job, a family, whatever it is, we have to be good stewards of it. Verse 8. Now it happened one day that Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a notable woman, and she persuaded him to eat some food. So it was, as often as he passed by, he would turn in there to eat some food. And she said to her husband, look now, I know that this is a holy man of God who passes by us regularly. Please let us make a small upper room on the wall, and let us put a bed for him there, and a table and a chair, and a lampstand, so it will be whenever he comes to us, he can turn in there. And it happened one day that he came, and he turned into the upper room and lay down there. Then he said to Gehazi, his servant, call the Shunammite woman. When he had called her, she stood before him. And he said to him, say now to her, look, you have been concerned for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Do you want me to speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army? She answered, I dwell among my own people. So she said, what then is it to be done for her? So he said, what then is there to be done for her? And Gehazi said, actually, she has no son, and her husband is old. So he said, call her. When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, about this time next year, you shall embrace a son. And she said, no, my lord, my God, do not lie to your maidservant. But the woman conceived and bore a son when the appointed time had come, of which Elisha had told her. And the child grew. Now it happened one day that he went out to his father, to the reapers. And he said to his father, my head, my head. So he said to a servant, carry him to his mother. When he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door upon him, and went out. Then she called to her husband and said, please send me one of the young men and the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come back. So he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon or the Sabbath. And she said, it is well. I love the fact that she had so much belief that she's like, it's well. I just need to get to this man of God. Then, verse 24, then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you. And so she departed and went to the man of God at Mount Carmel. So it was when the man of God saw her afar that she said to his servant Gehazi, look, the Shunammite woman, please run now to meet her and say to her, is it well with you? It is well with your husband? Is it well with your child? And she answered, it is well. Now, when she came to the man of God at the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to push her away. But the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is in deep distress, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me. Remember, they weren't psychics. The prophets, they heard from God, and then that's how they knew and prophesied certain things, because everything is to God. It was not on their own accord. Verse 28. So she said, did I ask for a son, my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, get yourself ready and take my staff in your hand and be on your way. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not answer him, but lay my staff on the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her. Now Gehazi went on ahead of him and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went back to meet him and told him, saying, the child has not awakened. When Elisha came into the house, there was the child lying dead on the bed. He went in, therefore shut the door behind the two of them and prayed to the Lord. So again, everything back to God. Verse 36. And he went up and lay on the child and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And he stretched out himself on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. He returned and walked back and forth in the house, and again went up and stretched himself out on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, call the Shunammite woman. So he called her, and when she came into him, he said, pick up your son. So she went in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she picked up her son and went out. And Elisha returned to Gilead, and there was a famine in the land. Now the sons of the prophets were sitting before him, and said to his servant, put on the large pot and boil some stew for the sons of the prophets. So one of them went out into the field to gather herbs and found a wild vine, and gathered from it a lapful of wild grounds, and came and sliced them into the pot of stew, though they did not know what they were. Then they served it to the men to eat. Now it happened that as they were eating the stew, that they cried out and said, men of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat it. Pause there, because those herbs were actually poisonous. Verse 41. So he said, then bring some flour. And he put it into the pot and said, serve it to the people that they may eat it. And there was nothing harmful in the pot. Then a man came from Baal Shalisha and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley bread and newly ripened grain in his knapsack, and said to him, give it to the people that they may eat. But his servants said, what? Shall I set this before 100 men? He said again, give it to the people that they may eat, for thus says the Lord, that they shall eat and have some left over. So he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over according to the word of the Lord. And that's the end of chapter 4. Wow, wow, wow. We are seeing types of Christ here. Elisha is showing, remember, Jesus, if you notice, Jesus, he fed multiples with 5 loaves, right? And 2 fish. He's doing the same thing. So it's not that he's Jesus, but we're seeing, remember, this is also showing, it shows shadows or foreshadowing of what Jesus is going to be, because Jesus is the all of everything. Beautiful stories, guys. That's all for today. That's all I got. It ended beautifully, right? That's all for today. Make sure to join us tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with your favorite reading Bible buddies. Guys, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to whoever you think this might be able to benefit. And as I always like to end, no matter what you're going through, God's got you. He will never leave nor forsake you, because he's got your back. That's all for today. Make sure that you're trusting in the Lord. You can reflect on this and know that God's got your back. See you later.